You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster, Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SEBO. The Option Block is brought to you by SEBO. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SEBO, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SEBO's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back with your first of your bi-weekly doses of the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which we are commencing our broadcast week. Hope you all had a great weekend out there. Hope you enjoyed all the content we put out last week. More to come this week, even though I am making my way down to yet another Southern studio for the OIC conference. This time going to be in Nashville this week. That should be interesting, but you'll be getting an interesting assortment of content throughout the week. Don't you worry, folks. And, of course, if you do like what you hear, keep throwing stars our way, whether it's on the OB feed, network feed, or where you get our mobile app. All of those help people discover the content at the end of the day, and that is the name of the game, after all. And then, of course, if you want to discover more content for yourselves, and who can blame you in these crazy, trying times, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go. Giveaways, live streams, 200-plus exclusive episodes already at your fingertips. What more do you want out of life? All sorts of fun there. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go as we go around the horn, see who is joining us on the... Actually, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's our kickoff show. We're launching the network yet again for the week here. So let's do it the way we are wont to do it. Let's get the old blood flowing, get the juices flowing. Let's wake up a little bit for the week, have a little bit of fun. It is time for our 80s wrestling trivia game. All right. Listeners, I'm joined on the show today by the unklest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, as well as the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. They both are primed on their buzzers, ready to say buzz. No buzzing until I unmute you. Any pre-buzzing doesn't count. I don't want to hear the complaints. Those are just buzzes that are lost to the ether. I had a good time. I was giving Uncle Mike a hard time. I had a good time in his neck of the woods this week. There is this enormous, the biggest in the country, apparently, collectibles and vintage toy show right literally in his town, St. Charles. People come from all across the country to go to this thing. It's only open for like one day, 8 to 3 on Sunday. It's crazy. 50 years this thing has been running. And I went out there this weekend, had a ball, just talk about the intersection of all things awesome that is 80s on the vintage side, plus sprinkle in a healthy dose of 80s wrestling. It was amazing. It was, and Uncle Mike, it's literally in his backyard. Can't be bothered to go. But the rest of the country was there. It was pretty freaking crowded. I was stunned how many people were there. But it was pretty cool. And I did have a delicious Skippy's Gyro and lemonade. So I did make it back to our long-standing sponsor / non-sponsor here of the show. So fun stuff. I'll have to give Uncle Mike a little bit of a hard time about that. During the show, did I see an actual rocking horse from the 80s that was actually Battle Cat? I didn't even know this thing even existed. There were like only 3 ever made in existence. The guy wanted like $1,500 for it. Did I buy it? Hell no. Did I see it and think it was the coolest thing ever? And whatever kid had that in the 80s was pretty damn lucky. Yes, I did. People were flocking with it, taking pictures. Did I hold an actual vintage Macho Man wrestling buddy from the 80s in my hands? Yes, I did. Did they pay the guy whatever hundreds of dollars he wanted for it? No, I did not. But there was tons of that stuff out there, which reminded me, we'll get our question of the week, and I'll give Uncle Mike more of a hard time. Our question this week, Roddy Piper, very, of course, iconic 80s wrestler. He is not the subject of our question this week, but I bring him up because they just announced Mattel makes exclusive stuff on their website. They release in small amounts and they sell out very quickly. And they do a lot of 80s wrestlers up there, and they're doing a lot of 2-packs. They just did Jake the Snake and Ravishing Rick Rude, and they just come out with another 2-pack. It's going to be Roddy Piper. He looks amazing. I want to get it just for Roddy. And then the other half of this 2-pack, which I'm even more excited about, which you never ever see a figure of, is George the Animal Steel. So that alone, any figure of George the Animal Steel, I'm probably going to want that in my collection. My question for you two, get your buzzers ready. George the Animal Steel would come to the ring with a stuffed animal. What was the name of George the Animal Steel's stuffed animal, which is included in that set, I should say? It's like a koala-looking bear thing, kind of beaten up. No buzzes?
Man, you got...
Nobody knows George the Animal Steel's stuffed animal?
I know more. I know other things about George the Animal Steel.
That's like the most iconic thing. He had the tongue, like the green tongue. He would eat the turnbuckle, and he would hug his stuffed bear, whose name was Mine.
Huh.
Yeah, it said Mine on it. Mine.
Now, I can tell you some other things about
All
George
right,
the Animal
so I'll
Steel
tell you what. You guys missed the big question. How about a half bonus point? Whoever is the first to buzz in and then tell me like a significant match or feud or event of George the Animal, so you get half a point.
Buzz.
Okay. TOSAW, go ahead.
All right, so a couple things about George the Animal Steel. He was actually friends with Ned Bennett, the co-founder of Options Express. George was from Detroit. George, of course, he had the green tongue and he used to eat the turnbuckles. George the Animal Steel is actually a born-again Christian and is... he's one of the few wrestlers that's somewhat sane from all that nonsense back in the 80s. And, he's just an all-around good guy from everything I know.
Mike, did you also know that he happens to be in the Michigan High School Coaches Football Hall of Fame and that he was a high school science teacher? But he coached the football team in outside of Lansing and is a member of the Michigan State of Michigan High School Football Hall of Fame.
Very impressive. I think we both should get a half point for that, Mark.
Look at you arguing for half points for both. We'll tell you what, I'm in a generous mood here. I'll give you both a half point, even though I'm very disappointed you don't know Mine. I always wanted a Mine as a little kid. So there you go. No points for Mine. Half points for each of you for your random George the Animal fact. I should take away TOSAW's points because he didn't go to this massive 80s spectacular that was in his backyard. As we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block. And before we dive into all this fun markets goodness, which again is another one of these kind of where will we go today kind of days here, listeners. We've had a lot of these of late. Uncle Mike TOSAW talking about the intersection of 80s, the two things I know you love, 80s, so Masters of the Universe type things, as well as 80s wrestling, WWE. Guess some of the things I picked up at this event. There was a line Mattel came out with not that long ago, but 5 or 6 years ago. I'd heard about a couple of them, but I missed out. They were only in stores for a brief period. It was called Masters of the WWE Universe. Can you guess where I'm going with this?
I think Rowdy Piper was actually an agent for Cobra for a while, and I think that there was actually some Rowdy Piper Cobra action figures.
That might have been true. I'm talking about the Motu overlap, because I picked up this weekend a pretty sweet Macho Man at Arms. So it literally was Macho Man Randy Savage as Man at Arms. Pretty awesome. It's on my desk right now. I got a Ricky the Dragon Steamboat Dragon Blaster Skeletor thing. And a whole bunch. I got a Manny Faces with a bunch of 80s wrestlers in there in his faces. This line was a gift to this show, and it only existed for a short time.
Who was He-Man?
He-Man, I forgot. I'll have to go see who that. I think there was the Ultimate Warriors in there. There's like Terror Claws, Triple H. They have some 90 guys in there too.
I can't imagine they made He-Man Hulk Hogan, because he's so on the outs with WWE.
He is kind of a controversial fellow these days, but yes, there was. I forgot who He-Man was. It might have been Ultimate Warrior actually, because he kind of fits that mold. There's a couple, and they reused a couple of the guys. Ultimate Warrior had a few. There's a couple of Triple H's in there. There's a couple other ones. But yeah, I was kind of scouring. That was my thing. I was scouring the show for. So I have my assortment of Masters of the Universe WWE guys from the 80s has grown as a result of my trip to St. Charles. So thank you, St. Charles, for making me spend a lot of money. But it was fun. And the gyros were quite delicious. All right, to the markets we go. And if you have your own stories about the intersection of 80s wrestling and 80s pop culture, hit us up, listeners. The markets kind of doing the same thing they've been doing for a while now, listeners. Trying to go a little bit in one direction, trying to move away from this 41.5, 41.30 level we've been hanging out at forever. And then they eventually, almost inevitably, it seems like, get sucked in the other direction. And then we hang out kind of unched. And that's pretty much what we're doing right now. S&P off a whopping 5 handles, listeners. About a little over 0.1%. NASDAQ off a little over 0.5%. The Dow quite literally unched on the day. All this means most of our vol friends are kind of shrugging their shoulders. VIX, when we kicked off the show, was at about a 17.20, up about 0.6 of a point. I'm sure if we keep hanging out here doing nothing, we'll be right back down at a 16 handle before long, if we haven't even gotten there. Right, not quite there yet, but we're looking like we're on that trajectory today. VVIX still looking frothy at about a 96, listeners. That's down a whopping 1 point, so still holding firm out there. So all that juice we were talking about making its way into the put wing out there, obviously still holding up. VXX 39.30, up about 0.1 of a point, so kind of unched there as well. UVXY 380, literally unchanged since our last show. SVIX 18.75, also literally unchanged from our last show. UVIX 12.10, literally unchanged from our last show. And VolQ was at a 20 when we kicked off the show. Oh yeah, what's that word? Unchanged from our last show. So a whole heck of a lot of not much going on out there, listening. Maybe we need to add a trading of 80s vintage collectible section to the show. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, I'm not much of a collectible guy. I mean, I still have my stuff from the 80s, but I guess I'm just about the memories.
Tell you what, if we all go in and chip in for that $1,200 Battle Cat rocking horse, think we could flip it and get $3-5 grand? What do you think?
Now that's interesting.
I mean, what kid wants a Battle Cat rocking horse? He-Man is loved by people yours and my age, not so much by kids Valentino's age. I will say.
Oh no, he's all over the toy aisles again. You go to like a Walmart.
I know.
It's all master stuff everywhere. It's all in the kid. And there's
actually,
kid stuff.
You know what? That's a point. Valentino sees it, and then he's like, "Oh, I want that." And I'm like, "No, Daddy's going to play with that."
Daddy, but you buy it for him, but then you take it. That's the difference there. Yes.
Yeah.
I will take that Macho Man at Arms, please. He's coming with me. All right, Mr. Meatball, what's catching your eye out there in another paint drying type of day, sir?
Yeah, interesting day. You know, it looked like we were going to be have a pretty nice day. S&P off. The VIX was looking like it was going red. And then they came in and they really sold the mega caps. Microsoft in particular, which was, already down a little bit on the day, dropped at one point down $8. The Amazon went from up on the day to down. Apple has been kind of floating in a range. Google, Meta is down. Google is the only one of those groups that are up ahead of earnings. Maybe not surprising. You see a little bit of profit taking before we get the kind of bathed in tech earnings tomorrow. Lot of strength and energy today. Exxon's up 2%. Chevron is up 1.5%. A lot of oil and gas names are moving higher. That's kind of putting a floor in the Dow. The NASDAQ, like, as you said, is about down 0.5%. The Dow unched, and that's putting the S&P and the Russell 2000 kind of smack in the middle. Kind of interested to see whether we have this continued pattern of kind of getting some selling in the morning and then they buy it up, or whether the selling actually can get a little bit of follow through today, and maybe we have a inside day that is actually directional, and maybe we close toward the bottom of our range. I'm not fully sure yet, but the market definitely feels a little bit heavier today. We've been so strong lately. Maybe a healthy pullback maybe makes a little bit of sense here ahead of these giant earnings that start tomorrow.
You have a lot of names popping off this week, so hopefully we won't see the paint drying tomorrow out there. Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. What is catching your eye out there in a mostly paint drying type of day?
Yeah, I would agree on the paint drying. In looking at this, we're waiting. What are we waiting on? I'm still not convinced the market's waiting just on earnings. It could just be waiting longer on the Fed, but who knows? We could be waiting on earnings coming out. You never know with that. The one non-paint drying thing that I'm seeing today, we have to go to the paint dry section to see the excitement. And that is the bonds are being bought up, having a little bit of a rally in the 10 years. So we are getting a little bit of movement there. Nothing too crazy by any means, but something to where it's non-paint drying within the paint dry section of what we look at. And of course, along with energy is up on the day, as well as market mentioned. I think we're just in a wait and see mode for this market at this stage overall. And depending on where we go with earnings will be or with the Fed, market's waiting on something. And so, it's a slow day when just looking at Bitcoin, that's really hasn't even moved on the day. So, it's a slow day. So that's what's happening today. And that's what I'm seeing.
Some might say out in St. Charles that BitcoinReallySucks.com. That's what I heard. It's a lot of people rocking that T-shirt out there. So I saw bumper stickers on cars, BitcoinReallySucks.com. You're making your presence known out there, sir.
I mean, that's just the way it goes out here in St. Charles. We believe that Bitcoin really sucks.
We'll say there was a lot of country out there in St. Charles, a lot of open lands. I'm not used to such broad expanses.
You were literally right on the very edge where you're at. That's literally the very edge of suburbia. There is that's pretty much where the western border of suburbia ends, is where you were.
Yes, I could definitely tell when I crossed that threshold, because all of a sudden there was a lot of land for days and not much else out there. Once you get past the Skippies, not too much.
When you're west of Randall Road, which is where you were, Randall Road's kind of what I would describe pretty much the edge of suburbia, at least in this area.
The edge of civilization, some might call it. But I digress. A conversation for another day, sir. The scenic lands of St. Charles out there. My Uncle Mike has so much time to focus on you folks out there when he's managing money. There's no distractions out there in the hinterlands of St. Charles, except for once a year or so when this big show comes to town. Must be crazy for people in St. Charles. The population of the town must triple for the weekend that this show is in town. All these strangers must be weird. All right, let's keep on rolling out here, out to the big markets. Let's see what's weird and strange and perhaps wonderful out here in the markets today. And if you said not a ton, you probably would be correct, except for the land of the S. We'll get there in a second. SPY and the S always manage to put up numbers, even on these kind of quiet days out here. VIX right now looking kind of about par for the course, 355,000 contracts. That ADV took another hit since our last show, listeners. It's down about 50,000 contracts from Thursday. It's down to 693. So back below 700,000 again. Again, still 700,000 for the S. That's nothing to sneeze at. It was around 500,000 not too long ago. So it's still looking robust in comparison to that. But of course, back away from the almost 900,000 that it was threatening for a brief period there. Everyone who watches VIX knows almost 1 million contracts a day. Not exactly sustainable, and kind of coming back off that now, at least until this next shoe that the market is waiting for drops. Is it earnings? Is it some other iteration of what's going on with the Fed. Who knows? But we're clearly waiting for something out there right now. SPY about 4.5, almost 4.6 million contracts. So again, more than half of its ADV already, which is right around 8.2. So the SPY ADV has remained robust, and not surprising. SPY can put up numbers even when there's tumbleweeds blowing through the rest of the market. The S, same deal these days, 1.35 million. Everyone loving those 0-day contracts, keeping the S afloat in a day when it otherwise probably would have 600,000 or 700,000 contracts going up out there. The ADV 2.6 million right now, so still looking pretty robust. A little bit down below that 3 million level, which is also borderline unsustainable out there. The small caps, IWM 347,000. They keep having days like this where they're doing 300, 200, 400,000 contracts by this point of the show, even though their ADV is 1.1 million. Somehow they managed to sustain that ADV, even though they're not really putting up the numbers, it seems like. Manage it, but c'est la vie, small caps, 1.1 million. That's a lot for IWM to put up, but so far that's where they're hanging out right now from an ADV perspective. Doesn't seem like they're going to hit it today, but hey, we shall see. And the Qs, 1.7 million. That ADV is actually fallen below 3 million. Shocking. Stunning. 2.85 million. Even though the Q is also a day that ends in Y, they're going to put up some numbers. Well, let's see what's going out there from a small name, single name, kind of micro perspective out there. Listen, let's sink our teeth into something fun instead of all this paint drying on the index side. And you know what? It looks like a pretty active day on the single name front. Cost you almost 230,000 contracts to break into the top 10. So that's, again, not nothing. It's not over 300K like we like to see on a busy day, but it's not below 200K either. So we're moving in the right direction there. That gets us to perennial top 10 offender these days, Microsoft. Ever since the Activision deal, and then now, of course, with this second leg of this AI war that's going on, Microsoft has kind of been just a almost permanent resident of our top 10 after having been excised out of it for better part of the last decade out there. Microsoft hasn't been a big player until really the last year and change out there in terms of, for us at least on the show, talking about them on a regular basis. Off about 5.5 handles today, nearly 2%. So this name can sell off. It's just been a little while, listeners. 280 and about a quarter right now, well north of their 52-week low they set not too long ago, about 213.5, listeners. And not that far away from the 52-week high of 294.18, even though a little bit farther away. Today, obviously, number 9, I guess the bell has finally tolled for Bed Bath & Beyond listeners. We were talking about it on the show last week. It seemed like they were circling the bowl, but we've said that before about Bed Bath & Beyond. They have managed to survive. But now the bell has tolled. Bed Bath heading to the great beyond out there. Have declared bankruptcy. A stock 18 cents right now, down 11 cents. Might be surprised it's worth that much right now, listeners. It got as high as 24 cents today for a little while out there. But yeah, going the way of the dodo, 231,000 contracts on the tape for that one. Got to wager a lot of puts on the tape, even though how many puts are left to be done when you're below the half strike. A lot of action on the half put strike, I'm guessing. Coinbase, number 8. You know, they've been making a lot of headlines lately. We're going to leave the U.S. if Gary Gensler has his way. That's a kind of an old saw. A lot of people play that card. We see here in Chicago, SIBO and CME have both played that we're leaving Chicago card. So we'll see if Coinbase wants to leave its biggest market out here, but it's selling off today. 54.83 off about 4.25, a little over 7%. Good for 233,000 contracts. And the number 8 spot on our countdown today. Number 7, AMD. Chip Zone coming a little early today. About 250,000 contracts for them. AMD off 1.25, trading 87.15 right now. Once again, putting fuel to my theory that there is a lot of symbol confusion out there. Number 6, right behind it, AMC. 285,000 contracts, selling off about 1/4, trading right around 4.75 right now. AMC, again, good for 285,000 contracts. And the number 6 spot today, number 5, we've got good old First Republic, 301,000 contracts. They have their earnings, looks like today after the bell, 15.75, getting a nice lift today, up about $1.50. So nice pre-earnings move, I suppose, out here. Interesting action for them. Good for 301,000 contracts. Number 4, right where it usually is, it's NVIDIA, the other half of the chip zone, 340,000 contracts. 269 even is where it's trading right now, off a little over about $2.20 right now. Again, number 4 on our countdown today. Number 3, Yes, back down at number 3, it's the fruit company. Only 414,000 contracts on the tape for them today. So no action for Apple really today. But then again, the market doesn't like when Apple's red, and it's still red right now, off about a quarter. It's like they've had a nice little range today. So 165.5 to the upside, 163.89 to the dark side. They have been trying to rally it pretty much ever since we started the show. It's gone from 164 to about 164 and 3/4 right now. We'll see if it can turn green again on the day out there. Number 2, the Amazonian sneaking into the number 2 spot, 458,000 contracts on the tape today. 106, pretty much even for them, off about 90 cents for the Amazonians. And then number 1, you know what it is. Day that ends in Y. It's going to be the old Teslas here. 1.35 million, so about a normal day for them. 1.35 million, that's a disrespectable number, all things considered. A 160.25, so continuing their sell-off that they started last week with their numbers not exactly blowing the doors off out there. Off of nearly $5 again today, or about almost 3%. So yeah, this last 5 days, we've seen Tesla off almost 15%, or about 27 handles. It was trading almost 190. Now here we are, about 160 here. So yeah, rough 5 days here for good old Tesla. But that gets us back to the earnings front, listeners. And hey, maybe we could find some fun stuff to sink our teeth into. If you can't find something that interests you on the earnings front this week, you really just aren't trying. Man, it's an embarrassment of riches this week. Tons of big names popping off this week. Let's get a quick rundown here. Today, we've got good old Mr. Buffett's favorite beverage, Coca-Cola, popping off today. We got Phillips today, Whirlpool after the bell today as well. Tomorrow, now we're getting into it, listeners. Verizon before the bell, UPS before the bell, Halliburton before the bell, Mickey D's and GE before the bell, and 3M and PepsiCo. So if you want the other half of the Cola Wars, just wait until Tuesday. And then Spotify and Raytheon, that's all before the bell even freaking rings, listeners. And then we've got after the bell, good old Softy. We've got Alphabet. We've got Visa. We got Chipotle, Juniper, you name it out there. Just, again, an embarrassment of riches. And that's not enough for you. Wednesday, we got our friends across the street. Not sure for how much longer, though. It's Boeing before the bell, Hilton before the bell on Wednesday, ADP, Hess, the old Hess trucks. Kids still want a Hess truck under the tree for Christmas. I don't know many kids who do, but I think they still sell them. Who knows? They're popping off. Maybe we'll find out on Wednesday before the bell, as well as ADP and General Dynamics. And then after the bell, another one of our frequent offenders, it's Meta. Right behind, we also have another former frequent offender. That's Roku. They were a perennial top tenner for a while there. They've kind of been kicked to the curb of late. Maybe they'll make it back in with their earnings on Wednesday, listeners. Just so many names popping off. Then Thursday, the party continues. American before the bell. Southwest before the bell. Lilly before the bell. Crocs, Rubber Shoe Ball before the bell. MasterCard, again, all before the bell, and Merck. Then after the bell, we got the Amazonians and Intel, my old stomping grounds, as well as Gilead and Amgen. Snap, you name it. Friday, we got Exxon and Chevron and a whole bunch of other fun popping off on Friday. So listeners, just an embarrassment of riches out here. Luckily for you, because we like you folks, we got updated earnings move results, earnings season, and earnings trades reports. Let's look here really quickly. We've got GM before the bell tomorrow. They're trading 33.5 when we ran this report. They're pricing in $1.73. In the past, they've moved to $1.45. So, man, a little bit extra juice out there. PepsiCo, Cola Wars, what they got cooking? Let's see. Before the bell, 185.5 is where they were trading. 365 is what they're pricing in. Listeners, in the past, they've moved exactly $2.50. So that's a fair amount of extra juice for good old PepsiCo. Intriguing. I wonder what's lurking in them there hills. Verizon, 37 1/3. They're pricing in $1.40. In the past, they've moved 90 cents. So similar deal here. Substantially more juice for Verizon. Let's keep the before the bell party going. Let's go out to Thursday, though. Let's go out to Southwest Airlines. 32.15 is where they were trading. They're pricing in $1.44. In the past, they moved 90 cents. They look almost exactly like Verizon from a before and after perspective on the straddles. The stock not that far away either, only $5 difference. So Verizon and Southwest Airlines trading with surprising synchronicity out there. If you want to see the full season for yourselves, listeners, we have updated it now with 70 names reporting. And we're still hanging out at pretty robust level. 143% is where we're hanging out right now. Again, that's going to come in. It's inevitable. We can't maintain this, but it's fun to see in the early blush out there. By the way, speaking of coming up, the long-term average has crept up to about a 96 now. So after languishing in the low 80s for the better part of the pandemic, finally starting to fight its way back to even now. So intriguing stuff. Will this be the cycle that does it, listeners? Will this be the cycle that pushes us over the edge? Look how many names are pricing in a heck of a lot of extra juice. This could certainly be the one, listeners. In terms of earnings trades, we are monitoring 75 long straddles and 48 long calendars for your earnings trading convenience out there. Where do you go to find all this fun stuff? Because we like you, all free of charge. TheOptionsInsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab to begin that voyage to the dark side. As we keep our voyage rolling right along, right on into God Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody. Let's do it. Let's begin our voyage to the dark side here. Let's fire up the old Eye of Sauron, see what it's got on the docket for us today. First up, maybe a newcomer to the Odd Block. If it's not, we haven't talked about it in quite some time. This is Sentinel-1, ticker symbol S. Love it. They got the single letter ticker out there, so good for them. Sentinel-1, this is a cybersecurity company. If you're not familiar with them, trading right now, 1776, excellent year. Maybe not the best stock price, especially if you're selling off nearly 90 cents in the wrong direction today, or nearly 5%. So bit of a rough day here for Sentinel-1. On the year, it was like a pretty rough year as well, off nearly exactly 50%. A year ago, it was trading about 35 1/3, and they came for it almost right away. On May 11th, it was trading $19. So got cut almost in half. Just in the span of a couple of weeks last year. Then they tried to rally it. They got it back up to, looks like it's high after the all-time high, or the one-year high back in May of last year, with the secondary high, shall we call it, was back in September. They got it back up to about 29 1/3, and then that was all she wrote. They ran out of steam, and by December, it was trading $13 again. Languished there for a while until March, really. It started rallying in March. Just in the last month or so, it's up 21%. So it's had a nice run, up a little over 3 handles in the last month. So is this the moment? Is this the time when the rebound is in? Let's see what the Eye of Sauron has to tell us. All right. Now, listeners, we have somebody going out there in the June 20s. It looks like the answer might be yes, listeners. Someone looks like they're gobbling up the June 20s. When we ran this, we saw 9,016 of the June 20s going up for $1. That is a 63 vol. The stock was actually a little bit higher. It was 1786. The stock's given up about a dime since then. But that hasn't stopped them from wanting these calls. They kept coming in for thousands more. Total of 26,000 of these June 20s have gone up now on the day, listeners. So a pretty active strike, a pretty active trade here for a name that's been kind of beaten up. Mr. Meatball, what's your spidey sense telling you? You think someone is looking for a return to the old ways here in Sentinel-1, sir?
You know, it certainly could be. Sentinel-1. I love that S is already gone. So it used to be Sprint.
Yeah.
But yeah,
they grabbed it.
This thing was just in the toilet forever and ever and ever. And then, you know, kind of interesting chart here. Definitely not one I've looked at very often. But yeah, that's some is it a call roll or is it a call overwrite? What was your take on this? Because there's some May going up and then a whole lot of June. You looks like they started buying for $1 and they really ran this thing higher. So yeah, it looks like someone's looking for a move back to 2025, something like that.
Yeah, there's like about 4,000 of the Junes have gone up today, but about almost 27,000. 4,000 of the Mays and about 27,000 of the Junes have gone up today. So it does seem like it's a June call palooza going up out here. They were lifting these offers out here. Looks like a lot of them kept going. They went up for $1.15. About a minute after this 9,000 lot went up as well. So they kept going up at higher and higher levels. It looks like they were buying. These are all opening, obviously, here as well. So yeah, impressive upside. Looks like someone looking for the return to form. And you're right, that kind of threw me for a loop when I first saw that too. I was like, is Sprint back for a second? I had to run and check and see what we were talking about. I was like, oh no, some savvy firm gobbled that up. And it is now everyone's favorite name, Sentinel One. So there you go, listeners. The markets move on. The tickers stay the same at the end of the day, listeners. Let's go on out there to this one we've talked about a little bit of late and all the rash of worry about contagion out there in the banking side. A lot of banks popping up on our radar these days, including New York Community Bank Corp, ticker symbol NYCB. Trading $9.22 right now, up about 20 cents, a little over 2% on the day. On the year, I'll have you take a guess, listeners, when their low for the year came. If you said back, about a month ago, you were correct. They hit $5.81 back then, but a year ago, they were actually trading $10.07. So at that point, they were cut almost in half for the year back in March. And then they rallied it back up to where it is right now, 9.25. Their actual high for the year is about $11 exactly. That came in August of last year. So interesting year. Mostly, I wouldn't say sleepy because they had some action, but mostly kind of a range-bound year until all this madness started in February into March with this contagion fear. You got a nice little V-shaped sell-off and recovery here in this name, and still hanging out there right now. And Mr. Meatball, someone's getting a little bit fast and loose out here with the paper here in New York Community Bank Corp. Because they came in and said, you know what? This contagion thing, this thing is way overblown. Even though it did break the 9 handle just this morning. It got to 897. So the 9 handle is by no means a shoo-in out here. And yet someone looks like they came in this morning just blasting away at these May 9 puts. Looks like they sold 19,681 of them for 35 cents right on the bid. That is a 39 vol. The stock at the time was $9.12. What makes this more interesting, listeners, is that there is an earnings announcement between now and May expiration, which probably accounts also for a little bit of that juice they're getting in that put sale. So, yeah, that adds a little bit of a wild card to this put sale. Mr. Meatball, they're not playing around. They're going straight at the money, slightly in the money earlier this morning, puts, and doing so for size going into an earnings announcement. I guess they're saying contagion. What contagion, sir?
Yeah, it's a pretty darn aggressive sale, I got to be honest. Now, a few weeks ago, we saw a trader open up a huge position long the 8 puts. That's where that 36,000 that's open there comes from. Very interested that we're seeing such a massive put sell right ahead of earnings. It takes some intestinal fortitude to put that one on. So hats off to that trader. If they end up being right, they're gonna bring in 35 cents a lot of times. But could be problematic for them if they end up being wrong.
Before we go any further, my eagle-eyed producer here did find the answer to your question from earlier, Mr. Meatball, in that Masters of WWE Universe line, the He-Man, because they couldn't go with Hogan, you're right? So John Cena was He-Man. So there you go. He came with an invisible battle axe and shield because, as you know, you cannot see him. So
not John Cena.
There you go. That doesn't exactly ring my 80s wrestling nostalgia bell, but under the circumstances, I think it makes sense at the time Hogan kind of persona non. Otherwise, Hogan, obviously, the shoe-in for that one. So there you go. That's why I didn't know who it was, because it was John Cena, not exactly in my wheelhouse. Let's keep on rolling. Let's go to our final name. We just talked about this name. I'm trying to see just last week. Let me see, because we were going back, listeners, to the realm of pure Storage, yes. We just reviewed some line in the sand puts just on our last show in Pure Storage. This is ticker symbol PSTG, listeners. They make flash storage devices. They're trading about $22.90 right now, off about 40 cents. On the year, they're off nearly $8 or about 25%. Their high for the year actually came back in February of about $32.50. Then they got just annihilated down to $23 on March 13th. And then they rallied it again recently up to about $26 just last week before crushing it again now. Went from $26 back down to about $22, 22 and change right now where we're trading. So the turbulent, I think I said this on the show last week, is flash memory now the new biotech out here? Either way, this is a pretty volatile chart. But it looks like they're back on our radar again today, listeners. Last week we talked about someone writing the March 23 puts. That was back on our March 2nd show. We were paying it off. So we talked about them a few times in the last month. They sold 7,000 of the March 23 puts for 44 cents. The stock was $24, pretty much even at the time. These went out worthless, so they pocketed a little over $300,000 on that trade. Today, they're going a different direction here with PSTG. There it is. We went out to, looks like a June vertical. We've got 4,000 of the June 26, 28 verticals going up. Looks like paper buying the 26s, selling the 28s. So pretty much as you would expect, doing it for about 36 cents. Listen, that's a 42 vol on the 26s. Similar vol, about a 40 on the 28s there. There are earnings in this. They're on exactly the end of May 31st. So comes pretty late on the earnings front, but they have more juice beyond that. They go all the way out to June expiration. So kind of intriguing. Looks like it's opening on both legs. This is no roll going on here. This is just a straight up buying themselves some upside. Like I said, we're hanging out right now at about $23. So Mr. Meatball, looks like somebody, after blasting away at a bunch of puts and being right in this name, someone is coming out now to say a little bit of June upside is the way to go, sir. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, interesting trade. But yeah, there's looks like they're looking for a pretty strong move back toward the 50-day moving average, which is around 26.5. But yeah, there's a bunch of June calls going in a name that I think we can all agree does not usually trade very much.
Yeah, not a normal thing. You like this, listeners? June 26, 28 for 30. It's only a $2 wide spread. You're paying 36 cents for it. So not a ton of money, but you're not exactly getting it for free either. The stock is pretty far away from that right now. It's at a little bit shy of 23. So you need a pretty decent pop by June expiration for this thing to really make some sense for you. But maybe you like yourselves a little bit of flash storage. This name certainly has had a tendency to move of late. So maybe that convinces you. Maybe that makes you want this. I don't know. I'm curious. Hit us up if you're intrigued. As it's time for us to hit up Uncle Mike, because it is time for the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Strategy Block, the portion of the show Uncle Mike takes the reins, dispenses some options, wit, and or wisdom. Uncle Mike, the question we all have at the top of your segment, before we even progress any farther, if you as Uncle Mike, were a Masters of the WWE Universe character, which one would you be? I could see you as a bit of a macho man at arms, kind of steadfast. You like yourself a good mace. Maybe you can pull off a good ooh yeah. I don't know. What character do you envision yourself as?
I mean, so I guess if I'm He-Man, does that mean I have to be John Cena, or does that mean that I get to be Uncle Mike He-Man?
I don't know. This is our own universe. We can make up our own rules. Do you want to be John Cena, He-Man, Uncle Mike, a combination of all three? You want to be the face? That's what you want to be?
No, I mean, I'm Uncle Mike He-Man. I'm He-Man all the way. I mean, I've been a power lifter as a younger man, and if I'm going to be Masters of the Universe, I'm going to be He-Man.
All right, interesting. I'm more of a trap jaw guy myself, but hey, to each their own. Uncle Mike, sir, what do you got on the docket for us this week?
And ironically, when I first got married, my wife had a cat, and I renamed that cat Battle Cat.
Did you put a little armor piece on his head when he ran around? Did you paint him green?
Nah, my wife didn't know me well enough at the time. I didn't want to try that. Otherwise, I probably should have.
Now you got to get a cat painted green and put that on there. I want to see some pictures, sir.
Yeah, I do need to. We do have cats. I need to paint them green, but I don't know if I'd like to stay married, so I probably shouldn't. So anyway, but today I want to talk about selling garbage. So in other words, I've talked about buying garbage in the past. So like, let's say that you're selling a put spread or you sell a call spread, and then if you're worried about a big move over the weekend, but you don't want to close out your position, you can buy on Friday, you can buy like a Monday call or put for a couple pennies, and then you can sleep well over the weekend. And if you're wrong, you only lose a couple pennies. But if for some reason it comes true, then you're not really in a bad spot because you have that garbage in place. But what I want to talk about is selling garbage and why you should really, quite honestly, never do it. So let's say, for example, that you're looking at a risk-reward graph. And this is something that's fairly common when you see a newer option trader. You're like, oh, well, if I'm looking at the probability chart, if I sell this call really far out of the money or this put really far out of the money, I mean, it's a 99% chance of success based upon the probability calculator that I'm using. And I mean, what are really the odds of the market moving this much during this amount of time anyway? And most of the time, 99% of the time, that probability calculator is going to be right, I would say. But the problem is that high probability equals really bad risk reward typically. So in other words, let's say you're selling a naked call or a naked put for that matter, and it is just so far out of the money, meaning that you're just not going to, there's no way with which this option is going to get touched by expiration. But what if it does? If you're getting your few pennies for that, and you're getting it week in, week out, month in, month out, whatever, and you're thinking of it as this annuity stream, well, you're going to be right most of the time, but the time that you're wrong, you're going to lose 1 year to 3 years worth of profits, depending on how high probability that you are. And so from there, what I would caution you in doing is that when you're selling far out of the money options, number one, I'd recommend not doing it. The only time that I guess I would do it is if you own a stock and you want to sell a very far out of the money covered call to where if the stock did move that much, you know what, I'm fine selling it at that level. That would probably be the only time I would consider it. But when doing it, understand that the higher the probability of the trade, the worse the risk reward is going to be. The lower the probability of the trade, the better the risk reward is going to be. So for example, let's say that you go ahead and you buy that garbage out of the money put or out of the money call for a couple pennies. Well, the odds of that actually working are astronomically against you. However, the risk reward is amazing. 1 penny can get you several $100s. And that's very common in trades like that. However, the odds of doing it are not very well. So what I want to go with today is just have an understanding that your risk reward has an inverse correlation to your probability most of the time. And that is the strategy block for today.
All right, we'll come up against it. Let's do a real quick mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, listeners, today is the day we've all waited for anxiously, or perhaps not at all. Yes, today's the day that SEBO is launching the one-day VIX. Do you care? Do you not care? Thought we'd put it up to you, the ultimate arbiter at the end of the day, the audience, to see what you folks are feeling. Right before showtime, we asked you, hey, one-day VIX launches this week. Do you think this short-term measure of volatility will be useful for your trading, or is it just another meaningless number to clutter up your trading screen? So yes, you like it. Maybe you trade short-term, or no, you think it's meaningless. Mr. Meatball, are you excited that today is the day? And then B, what do you think our audience is voting for?
Well, I don't think we're going to be trading it, but I think it'll be useful for gathering information on where short-term vols are moving and how one-day options are trading. So I definitely see some value in it.
You'd vote for yes, it's useful. Okay.
Yeah, it's useful.
Interesting. And Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you. One-day VIX, useful for your trading, informative number, or kind of another meaningless statistic to clutter up your screen?
I don't know if it's going to be useful for me or not. I plan on looking at it, and I'm very intrigued by it. So I'm going to be in the I don't know camp. Yeah, definitely intriguing and something I'm going to spend some time looking at for sure. Don't know if I'll use it, though, in the long run.
Well, our audience has spoken, at least in the short term. Now, it's only been live about an hour, listeners. You got the question of the week. So if you're listening live, of course, you can vote at any time. If you're listening on the podcast, make sure you get over to add options throughout the week. Make your voice heard. We try to retweet it so you folks can find it if it isn't up there. It's pinned right now. Probably won't be pinned all week, but we have a lot of content hitting our Twitter feed, obviously, throughout the week. Right now, 75% of you saying no, this is a meaningless number. It's just going to clutter up your trading screen. You want no part of it. 25% saying, yeah, you're intrigued. Maybe you trade short term. You want to use this VIX for your analysis. So right now, the early voting is pretty strong, listeners. You agree? You disagree? Get in there, add options, make your voice heard as we keep going around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on until our big Thursday episode of the old OB. Mr. Meatball, we'll start with you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until our next episode?
Earnings. That's what we're going to be watching. We've got some big ones coming out between now and Thursday and that are really, I think, going to set the table for the market the rest of the rest of the year.
A lot of earnings on the docket. Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on till the Thursday episode?
I'm also watching earnings, but not earnings. I'm only doing it 2/3 as much, I guess. But watching that, seeing if that is the bus with which the market has been waiting for, or to see if the market's continuing to wait for the Fed. We will see. So that's about it right now.
It's also about it for the show, listeners. But don't worry. If you want more content in your lives, we're here for you. We'll be back in a little bit with the crypto rundown. Our old buddy, Mr. Bill, joining us. You know, he's pretty happy with the crypto levels we're seeing out there. Are you happy? I guess we'll find out. All sorts of fun joining us on the crypto rundown. Then, of course, I am heading down to the OIC conference this week. So the Thursday episode of the show should be fun. I will be doing it live in person with the Flowmaster. So that'll be fun. We did one from SEBO here. Now we'll be doing one together from Nashville. So 2 episodes live with the Flowmaster. That's always a good time. So look forward to that. And Mr. Uncle Mike, if folks want to look forward to what you got cooking, where should they go? What should they do?
Come to my office in St. Charles. I'll buy you a Skippy's Euro. No, check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. Follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. And that's where you can find me.
Take them up on the Euro. Pretty freaking good is all I'm going to say. Listen. A little disappointed when the sign says lemonade. I was expecting an assortment of homemade lemonades. They were instead referring to their Italian ice, which was also quite good. I liked that. But the lemonade was just like your typical Tropicana lemonade. So I was expecting a nice homemade lemonade, Uncle Mike. Not quite that, but the Italian ice was quite good. So they should more call it, Skippy's Euros and Italian ice to clarify things for people. But hey, good stuff.
I'll have to talk to old man Skippy.
You do. And tell him also, where's my check? I've been plugging his damn restaurant for like a decade now. Where's my monies, as they say? I'll settle for in-kind compensation, a crate of euros a month. How about that? All right, we'll go down.
Fair.
We'll go down that road. All right. And Mr. Meatball, sir, I won't be seeing you next week, but I'll be seeing you in 2 weeks. Going to be doing some live OB with you in a couple of weeks, sir. Are you excited?
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. Come and check us out. And go to option.com. I'm writing stuff on VIX and volatility just about every day. Come and check it out.
And I'm excited, sir, because we were going to drop your prize in the mail the other week, and I thought, it's more fun to hand it to him in person so I could see his face. So you will be awarded your major award when I see you in I can see Sarge is looking at me right now. and he's waiting to belong to you, sir. So there you go.
Wait.
Major award. Not quite as sexy as the major award in Christmas Story, but hey, Sarge has his own sex appeal. In the meantime, check him out, listeners. OptionPit.com is the place to go. We got to get on out of here. Back in a little bit with the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.